One of the great things about this list is beginner friendly, it's small business owner friendly. There are absolutely no plugins, code, anything required at all, which is one of the many reasons I recommend all small business owners try it out.
Success with Google Ads has always been built on the foundation of not only having the right keywords to target, but also reviewing and targeting the correct audiences. And while that has always been important, with all the upcoming changes that is happening inside Google Ads, this is now becoming even more of a core essential skill for success with Google Ads, is getting your audience targeting right. And that's why I invited Jyll back onto my channel, because she has just released a book called Inside Google Ads, everything you need to know about audience targeting for Google Ads. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion that I had with Jyll about audience targeting and Google Ads. All right, so it's an absolute pleasure to have Jyll with me, not for the first, but actually for the second time. And the reason why I've got Jyll with me is because we really, as I said in the introduction, really want to dive into the whole world of audience targeting inside of Google Ads. So Jyll, I think a great first place to start would be if you could just run through, has there been any changes in regards to audience targeting, how it works or operates over the past 12 to 24 months?
There have definitely been some changes to audience targeting with a few new features coming in, and then other features that you may not have realized have gone away. So I'll start with some of the newer features. There's one called a Google Engaged Audience. And this is something that's really great for small business owners, for newer accounts. Basically, it's a way that you can do thing without having to set up any lists or GA4 or Google Tag Manager or any of that. Every Google Ads account automatically gets this engaged audience, and Google automatically builds it for you based on people who engage with your website through paid and organic channels. So for example, even if you haven't been running ads at all, if you have organic YouTube content, your organic listing on Google search, your Maps profile, Google's building that engaged audience and you can retarget them. So that's one really exciting new audience targeting capability.
Just before you go on from there, just so people know, I mean, do they have to have GF4 connected in with Google Ads, or what sort of connections do they have? Nothing?
Yeah, one of the great things about this list, it's beginner friendly, it's small business owner friendly. There are absolutely no plugins, code, anything required at all, which is one of the many reasons I recommend all small business owners try it out.
Okay, great. All right. Let's move on to the next one from there then.
Yeah, and another one more on the advanced end, I would say, is a feature that falls under Customer Match. So Customer Match is that feature in Google Ads where you upload your customer list and can do all kinds of cool stuff with it. And there's now something called conversion-based customer lists. And so the way that works is, let's say you have a purchase conversion on your website, you're tracking every time someone makes a purchase. If you have conversion-based customer lists turned on, then Google can start actually building an audience of people who have purchased, or an audience of people who have completed your various conversion actions. So it's this really nice melding of conversion actions and audience targeting. And again, a way to just build audiences off of something you already have going on in your Google Ads account with conversion tracking.
Okay, great. And is there any, so let's just think about sort of a starter, someone new into Google Ads, running into Google Ads. So obviously those automatically lists are going to be created. Is there any sort of other recommendations you give so that within that first 60, 90 days, 4 months of the account, that they're starting to build out their audience data so that they can use for extra targeting? Is there any other recommendations for lists that you would make sure are set up?
Definitely. So within your data segments, as Google calls it, you can build a website remarketing list, you can build a YouTube remarketing list, you can have your customer list, and then there's this automatically created engaged audience. So even if you are a new advertiser, which means you can't even use the customer list yet, I still think it's a good idea to get into the habit of just once a month uploading your list of email addresses into Google Ads, because even if the list isn't large enough yet to use for targeting, the mere existence of that list is going to inform things like your smart bidding algorithm, learning who to bid up or bid down for, or any performance max campaigns or optimized targeting you might be running. It'll be a signal there. So that's the first one. Start uploading that customer data, even if you can't use it for targeting yet. For YouTube, if you do have a YouTube channel, link it to your Google Ads account, start building a list of people who view your YouTube videos, even if you don't think you're going to target it at all. One day you're going to want to target it and it'll be there for you. I know you know that full well, Aaron. And then website remarketing, whether you set that up via GA4 or via the Google tag, having some kind of way to capture the people who have visited your website so that you can one day show ads to them again in Google Ads, or even just get insights off of that list in Audience Manager. So those are
Yeah.
the three I would start thinking about when you're new to Google Ads, is getting your website remarketing ready, YouTube, if applicable to you, and then just getting into the habit of uploading that customer data.
Great. Now, before we move on to, because obviously I do want to get a little bit more strategic about how we use audience targeting with different lists, different types of campaigns. I did just want to stop and just want to give some people some clarification on the difference of audience targeting inside Performance Max campaign for signals versus what we would call, traditional targeting, which you can use in other types of campaigns. Hello there, and I hope you're enjoying my latest interview. I just wanted to quickly let you know that all of these interviews are sponsored by my paid Google Ads community, which is called the Google Ads Mastery Community. I set this community up for one clear purpose, and that is so that I could provide people with direct Google Ads support. And we do this in three main ways. Firstly, we run weekly live calls, and these are live calls that are run in all different time zones so that we can get the support to you. And it's where you can actually ask myself and also highly skilled members of my Define Digital Academy team direct questions about your Google Ads campaigns. We then also run monthly masterclasses, and these are in-depth teachings for what you need for success with Google Ads. And they don't only cover things inside of the Google Ads dashboard, we also cover specific training around things like offline conversions and how to increase the performance of your landing pages. All the important things you need for true success with Google Ads. And above all else, we've got our Google Ads community feed, and this is where you can join well over 300 other like-minded professionals like you. And we've got Google Ads specialists, agency owners, and also direct business owners who are there supporting and helping each other with how to see the best success with Google Ads throughout the year. And the best thing about this community is that it's all at a really low price, because you can get full access for less than the price of a cup of coffee every day. And that's why I set up this community, is so that you can get tailored Google Ads support for a very low price. Right now, we're going to get right back into the interview, but if you'd like to find out more information about how you could join, and plus also get a lifetime discount to join my Google Ads Mastery community, just follow the link in the description below.
This is something people get very confused about. So true audience targeting is where you get to tell Google the kinds of people you want to show ads to people in market for shoes, people who are luxury shoppers, people who visited your website, etc. In Performance Max campaigns, although you can add audiences there, that actually creates an audience signal, which means ultimately Google is going to show ads to whoever it wants. And I actually think there's a bit of a placebo effect that goes on here. Like, you can put your audiences into that audience signal. You can tell Google the kinds of people you want to target. But ultimately, that Performance Max campaign cares about conversions and specifically achieving the goal of your bid strategy. And so you can give it all the signals you want, but if it finds another pocket of people somewhere completely different that convert better, it's going to go after them instead. And I should mention, that's not just a Performance Max thing. If you have optimized targeting turned on in your demand gen campaigns, or audience expansion turned on in your video campaigns, it does the exact same thing. It takes your audience targeting and turns it into an audience signal instead.
Yeah. And that's why I say, especially with Performance Max, it really operates, for the parents out there, we get this operates like I call it the teenager of all Google Ads campaigns. So it's just like, I don't care how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do whatever, regardless of what you told me, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And if I get the end result, hey, look, it's all okay. And not worrying about the path of discussion behind it. So, but yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it.
Actually, it's funny you say it as a teenager, because as a parent of young children, I always think of Performance Max as like a young child. You have to give it very clear, specific directions via your assets and your bid strategy and the conversion data you feed it. And if it's able to achieve that, it will. But sometimes it's just not able to achieve that. And that's something to keep in mind as well.
I guess probably the reason why I'd say the difference between a teenager and young kids is, obviously with the young kids, you can at least put some extra guardrails in there and kind of stop it. Whereas if a teenager, it's harder to control. But anyway, this is.
I'll get back to you in 10 years about that one. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, we're looking at here, for people who don't know, I've got 3 teenage daughters. Jyll's earlier in the piece. So yeah, I think you'll agree with me in 10 years from now. So.
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. So that's kind of some of the fundamentals and basics of what we've spoken about inside of audience targeting. What I really want to get into is probably some of these newer types of Google Ads campaigns, especially the time of recording this. Google Marketing Live was only last week. And for me, and I'm sure you would agree as well, is that audience targeting has always been important, but I do feel it's like even more important now than what it probably was a couple of years ago. Let's firstly start with demand gen. Do you want to maybe talk me through, any strategies you're using around your audience targeting, how you're creating audiences inside of demand gen, and what you sort of find has been working there?
Absolutely. So demand gen is unique from an audience targeting perspective in a
Yeah.
few ways in Google Ads. So first is that in demand gen, you only have audience targeting. You don't have
Yeah.
content targeting options, whereas with display or video campaigns, you also have the option to target by topics, placements, or keywords. Not an option in
Yeah.
demand gen. So demand gen is an audience only campaign type. Secondly, in demand gen, you have lookalike segments. And this is the only place in Google Ads that you can use those. Now, we used to have
Yeah.
a feature in Google Ads called similar segments or similar audiences. Those were
Yeah.
deprecated, lookalikes came out, but they are not the same thing. You can go down that rabbit hole if you want, but they are not the same thing. A lookalike segment in Google Ads today works very much the same as lookalikes work in Meta
Yeah.
Ads, for example, and it's unique to demand gen. The next thing I'll say is that combined segments are the part of Google Ads where you can create these really niche audience segments, like they have to meet this one and this one, or
Yeah.
that one, not that one. It's called audience stacking or audience layering, and you can't use those in demand gen.
Yeah.
And this was, again, a very quiet change that sort of happened. But now the only places you can use combined segments in Google Ads are search or display campaigns. You can't use them in video, can't use them in demand gen. So that means with your demand gen campaign now, you have audience targeting only. You can do these lookalikes, but you can't create super specific niche audiences. So the best way to get really specific with demand gen, and what I usually recommend to people who are just getting started, is to build something called a custom segment. And that name can be confusing for people because in Meta Ads, a custom segment is remarketing. In Google
Yeah.
Ads, a custom segment is not remarketing, but it's how you build your own audience list based on things people have searched for, the types of websites they visit, and the types of apps they use. So although
Yeah.
Google has many of its own audiences that are really helpful, your detailed demographics, life events, in markets, and affinity segments, as well as all your remarketing options, I
Yeah.
often find that starting with building your own custom segment based on things people have searched for can be a really great way to get started. Because, of course, a custom
Yeah.
segment based on those search terms only works that way on Google-owned properties like Google, YouTube, and
Yeah.
demand gen, of course, primarily focuses on those Google-owned properties.
Yeah, and but I mean, so also like to add in there too is obviously just a point of clarification for people listening. I'm sure you would do this as well. Is that either you can't layer the audiences inside of demand gen, you can add in some level of exclusions of just kind of doing the same thing. So if you want to exclude out your converters or exclude out certain website visitors, you can do it that way a little bit, but
You can,
it
but
would be
again,
great if
not the way
it.
you used to. So you used to be
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
exclude any of Google's audiences, like
yes,
the detailed demographics. Now you can only
yeah, no,
exclude remarketing segments. So
yes,
you can
yeah,
exclude remarketing segments, but you used to be able, for example, people who are homeowners and in market
yeah,
for pool installation. You can't
yeah,
do that anymore in demand gen,
yeah,
which, to be fair, I love demand gen campaigns. They have tons of
mm,
amazing capability to the audiences, but they don't let you go as niche and narrow as you used to be able
yeah,
to back when they were known as discovery.
yeah. So we're going to come back and sort of review a lot of these things, but now let's just talk about Google Marketing Live about a week or two before they released AI Max. I know that we've both spoken and shared topics on this, but do you want to let's just take a bit of a deeper discussion in around, probably worthwhile just sort of explaining AI Max again, but then I'd really like to get into how you're using AI Max with audience targeting. I mean, not using yet, how are you planning to use it when it becomes released? And what are your sort of thoughts about how you're going to layer it with audience targeting to get better results?
Yeah, thank you for the clarifications. As of when we're
Yeah,
recording this, I have not used it yet, and unless people
yeah,
are in the advanced beta, they haven't used it yet. But AI Max is really just a bundling of a few features together in
mm,
search campaigns. It is an optional setting that you'll be able to
yeah,
choose within search, and it turns on keywordless targeting, which is a fancy way of saying, dynamic search ads, basically. Text asset customization, which is a
yeah,
rebranding of automatically created assets, so letting Google write headlines and descriptions, etc., for you. And final URL expansion, which is a feature you may have seen in Performance Max, and that's letting Google direct that paid traffic to any part of your website, not just the final URL you designate in your
yeah,
ad. So really, it's funny, when I was at Google Marketing Live and talking to Googlers, they just called it Search Only Performance Max. And I was like, well, if that's how
yeah,
they're thinking about it, that's probably how I should think about it, right? It's basically just
yeah,
like a Performance Max that only runs on search. A few little bells and whistles here, but for the most
yeah,
part, That's what AI Max is. So it's really, in my opinion, a rebranding of existing features to encourage
Yeah.
advertisers to go more broad with your keywords, allow Google to flex out into queries you may not have
Ugh.
advertised on otherwise. And of course, when paired with smart bidding, that could potentially drive great results for you.
Yeah.
And so that's where audiences could really be helpful, because you can layer audiences into your search campaigns today, and you can
Ugh.
still do that with AI Max by choosing the targeting setting. So when
Yeah.
you add audiences to your search campaign, you have the option to choose targeting or observation. If you choose
Yeah.
targeting, and let's say you add an audience of people who visited your website, that means you only want to show an ad if the user's search matches your keyword targeting or your keyword list targeting,
Yeah.
and they visited your website. So if they haven't visited your website, they don't see the ad. And so that's a really effective way to use audience targeting today. If you're in, for example, a B2B space and you want to make sure you're reaching
Yeah.
more of like a business audience, you can use detailed demographics for that. One I see a lot in home services is if you want to make sure that you're just reaching homeowners and not
Yeah.
renters, then you can exclude renters from your search campaign. So lots of different ways to layer audiences. And I think especially if you are a smaller budget advertiser who does want to test AI Max, it might be a good idea to either exclude some audiences that you know don't perform well, or limit your targeting only to audiences that do perform well.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't, as I said, I mean, I haven't used AOMax yet, but I'm thinking for ones that we would use it for, kind of giving a soft recommendation at the start, because obviously this will change once we actually get in to see some real data, is that to start off, I'm going to be putting, for the campaigns that I think would be useful for it. So straight away, I'm not going to be testing it on any. I've got a couple of clients or coaching clients who are going through that they're in a really, really super niche market where there's like they've got a higher price point, but there's a high volume. It's not going to work for them. Very much I'm thinking e-commerce brands is going to be great, but we're still going to put it into a separate search campaign to start with, just so I can, but effectively run it like a dynamic search campaign like we used to, where you build out some negatives so you're not undermining your current search campaign to come out and see, because we have had some really good cases where we've found new search themes that we weren't targeting before. So I think that's going to be a good thing, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it sort of rolls out. But I'm not recommending for people to turn on AO Max within their current search campaigns to start with at the moment.
I know, but you know they're going to. It just, with the broad match setting now, and this will
Yeah.
be replacing that, no one wants
Yeah.
to turn on the broad match setting, right? But when it's
Yeah.
the AI Max setting, people are
Yeah.
going to want to turn that on. So at least it brings more people into our coaching practices, right?
Yeah.
Silver lining.
Yeah. So no. It's look, it's going to be. I think for me is I still think with AO Max, it's definitely going to be something that's going to be required. I think one of the key messages they sort of said in Google Marketing Live was that how do you do keyword targeting where you don't know the keywords? Now, one thing that I thought was interesting is that last year they gave some stats and data around 15% of all searches are new, and search terms with 5 or more keywords in them or 5 more words in them have grown by 1 point. I think it was 150% or 1.5x. They didn't release that data again. That was one of the data points I was interested to see. So the only thing I can think of there is that maybe the growth hasn't been as fast as what they had have thought in terms of the changing search behavior habits. So I still think AOMax is going to be a tool, but I just still think for a lot of users, people's search behavior patterns, they will change, but they're slowly starting to change. But there's still a large part of the market which are doing what we would call traditional keyword searches.
Yeah, but it is changing. I mean, if you think about from the
Yeah,
user
100%.
perspective, AI overviews and now AI mode,
Yeah.
like how do you even think of keyword targeting a 150 word thing that the user has typed out and asked Google? And so that's like one of the quotes I heard at Google Marketing Live. I forget who said it was, removing from keyword matching to intent predicting. And while we outside of Google may not quite buy into that yet, that's really the vision Google is sharing. It's no longer about these are the exact words I want to advertise on.
Yeah.
It's like these are the kinds of users I want to reach who are likely to be interested in what you offer. And I mean, that's audience targeting. Like that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
So really converging
definitely.
there.
Yeah, and the only thing that I mean, it'd be interesting to see your point of view on this as well, because obviously for people who don't know Jyll's background, she was inside of Google. The downside I do have with the extra data piece that I wish they would give, like when they give these lines of AI Max or 27% increase in conversions, the example they gave was Volvo, where you go, for one, that company has got everything dialed in their conversions, their landing page, everything like that. The other thing I'd say is they're probably spending multiple thousands of dollars per day, not only per month. So there's enough data there. That doesn't really boil down to the majority of people who are watching this video where smaller budgets, they don't have that data set in there. So so there's any sort of advice you'd have for people like that, just to really not see through, I just really just question with caution, because the 27% is real. No one's doubting that. It's just they don't give the extra context.
It's very true. And I will say, based on my experience as a Googler for 6 years, products are really developed and stats and events like that are really shared for the benefit of large advertisers. It's not that Google doesn't care about smaller advertisers.
No.
It's just when you want to test a new feature, you roll it out on the kind of clients that spend $1 million a day and you get some quick results learning if it works or not. So as a small business advertiser or a newer advertiser to Google Ads, I think the best piece of advice I can give is, just because something in Google, like a recommendation or a warning, or someone from Google, who calls or emails you, says you should do this, you don't have to listen to it. Those are recommendations. They are sales recommendations from a sales force. And I know we spoke about this in our last conversation, Aaron. They are not someone who intimately knows the detail of your business. And honestly, they're probably not someone who's ever even opened Google Ads before. When I worked at Google selling Google Ads, I was one of the few people on my team who actually had opened the Google Ads interface and knew how to navigate it. So that's my best piece of advice I could give you when getting started, is you don't have to do something just because Google says so, whether that's a recommendation saying to add these keywords, or a rep calling you up saying to activate a Performance Max campaign. Do your own research. If you want to do it, go for it. But if not, you can say no to Google. It's okay.
Yeah, one of the lines I always give, and just the message I give out to people who ever, because this, I'm sure you get the question again, is I just say, if you get a recommendation, just politely ask, can you give me 2 or 3 case studies for a brand that's in my niche, that's spending about the same amount of money, that's made these changes, what's happened? And sometimes they do get the case study, and it goes. Other times they don't, and then well, that's just not a recommendation I'm going to implement at the moment. All right. So what I also going to say too is that people may be aware that Jyll's actually written a whole book on Google Ads and audience targeting, which you should show up through there. We're going to put a link in the description below as well for anyone who wants to grab that book. But do you want to, maybe do you want to sort of break down, I guess, do you have any guidelines or, 3 best practices that people can start using to, I guess, really get the best results out of audience targeting with Google Ads?
3 ways to get the best results
out
of audience targeting with Google Ads.
I'm
I'm talking about this. I wrote a whole book about it. So first thing I will say, getting started with audience targeting. I think the most important kind of audience targeting you want to set up is something we spoke about at the beginning of this conversation, which is those your data segments. So whether that's a website remarketing list, your customer list, a YouTube segment, you just want to start getting all these bells and whistles connected and hooked up and ready to start collecting data, because at some point you're going to want to use them. And for most kinds of audience targeting, they only start collecting data the day you set it up, or maybe they can look back 30 days, but you can't look back 2 years and say, oh, I wish I'd set that up. So definitely set up those your data segments so that they are available for you to use later on. I think the next thing I will say is, we often focus so much on who we want to target. It's just as important to focus on who you want to exclude. So sometimes excluding certain audiences can be a better strategy than trying to target. Because remember, there are a lot of users who may be unknown. So let's say, for example, you have a product and you want to reach parents. One thing to do could be just targeting parents, but another could just be excluding not a parent. And by excluding not a parent, you have people who are parents and people who are unknown. And in that unknown space, there can often be a lot more affordable reach, just because Google doesn't have as much data about those users. And then I think the third piece of advice I'll give is, if you're planning to start advertising in image or video-based ads and you're not sure where to start, I will 9 times out of 10 recommend a demand gen campaign versus a display campaign or a video campaign. Even though it has some limitations, like only audience targeting, not content targeting, the traffic quality you get from Google and properties is much higher. Lookalikes, I've seen some good results, some not good results. So my jury's still out on those, but it's just going to have higher quality traffic from those Google-owned properties than what you would find on display. And then with video, you can only run video campaigns on a reach objective now. Like you can only optimize for impressions or views. You can't even optimize for clicks to your website, never mind conversions. And I know most people just getting started want those clicks or conversions. So demand gen is really a great place to start with audience targeting.
The great thing with demand gen too is that one thing that I was sort of surprised about with the I'm not surprised, happy about when the sort of the updates they rolled out earlier this year was that the actual audience data that you get in a demand gen campaign is, it was a lot better than what I thought you would get. So we're even going through process and doing two things where one, when we're creating new audiences inside or segments inside of demand gen, we're looking at the data from search campaigns and building our own list in there, or the opposite, where if demand gen's finding some discovery audiences and we've got other targeting audiences in search or whatever the situation would be, we're then pulling that out and moving that back in. So that's another good thing that I'm using with that audience data, is using it inside of demand gen and outside of demand gen.
You definitely want to use it across. Like, I would never recommend anyone just launch a demand gen campaign and that be it for Google Ads investment. Like, does
Yeah.
demand gen actually generate demand? Maybe, maybe
Yeah.
not. Depends on your targeting and your creative. But you are building this list.
Yeah.
It's going to build your Google engaged audience, for example, and when you like do something with them. And usually the do something with them happens in a search campaign where you may have audiences applied, in a marketing campaign, which may be in a separate ad group in demand gen or a separate demand gen campaign. But yeah, if you're going to generate all that demand, just make sure you're ready to do something with it.
Yeah, no. That's definitely right. I mean, I guess, look, you and I would both really attribute the power of YouTube and the power of things like that does help across brands. Obviously, organic and paid is different in there, but I do definitely think that demand gen is even a really good starter for brands to start moving into YouTube. But I'm also definitely too, I'm really big on breaking those ad groups out into, so you've got a shorts placement, you've got an in-stream placement, you've got an in-feed placement, set out into the different ad groups, because you very much need different content there for that to win in each of those ones. I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, but last question, Google Marketing Live was last week. Have you got any, I guess, takeaways that you are thinking that you will either A, implement, or B, you're going to test out? And it could be from any of the announcements that came from Google Marketing Live.
Well, there were so many great announcements. I was in that room in Mountain View, my jaw just kind of like dropping and dropping and dropping. I'd say one of my biggest takeaways is this is the first time that I have seen YouTube really shine at Google Marketing Live. Obviously mentioned before, but usually it's all about Google Marketing Live, and this really felt like Google and YouTube Marketing Live. One of the new features I'm excited to test is called attributed brand searches. And so that's the way where you're going to be able to see how your YouTube investment generates brand demand, people actually going to search for your brand, which I think is so great, because right now, as I mentioned earlier, you either run a video campaign optimizing just for views or impressions, or you run demand gen optimized for clicks to your website or conversions. Someone going to search for your brand is a really interested action, even if they're not quite ready to buy yet. So I'm really interested in that. I think overall with my Google Ads coaching clients, I don't often recommend YouTube when people are just getting started with Google Ads, but I'm starting to rethink that and starting to formulate some strategies for how smaller businesses who are running search and it's seeing great results, we have modest budgets, how can we put a little bit of YouTube into that to really help grow and expand and reach people they might not otherwise be reaching. So that was one of the things that really piqued my interest to Google Marketing Live.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I've been on the record for quite a while saying that I really think that this year is the year that all brands, all businesses, regardless of what they're in, should start looking at doing something on YouTube. And the great thing with it as well is, especially if you go for something in the Shorts network, like we're really seeing the best format is user testimonials. So it can even just be, it doesn't even have to be like and sometimes in the Shorts, like what I call addy ads, just flop. And it's more the natural testimonial. I think that my best Shorts performing ad is purely a snippet from a Zoom call that I had with the client. Obviously got permission for them to share, but and I think there was like a 10-second edit of me at the end. Apart from that, So I think also as well, especially with something like a Shorts, you don't have to have super high quality to enter the game.
It's true. What were you most excited about from Google Marketing Live?
Yeah, so that was my thing too. I was really excited about the attribute. The other thing I was really excited about, and this is more a stat, which gave me a little bit more, was that the largest growth market in search was actually the Gen Z market, so 18 to 24. So not necessarily a feature, but it was more a little bit of a pushback from a lot of the dooms that day, saying that search is dying. Now, I think the search mix inside of brands will become a lot more branded search, or a lot more product title search off the back of discovery. Some of the other things too that really sort of interest me as well, I've got to go back and have a look at the data, where they're pulling it from. But some of those data metrics around YouTube and how it was interacting with, was it 65% of all new discovery purchases, the first interaction was actually YouTube, not a social platform. So that was something. Yeah, that was something that was interesting. There's a couple little things like you just got to work out, because I know, especially with YouTube as well, you're looking at, I mean, it was slanted. I'd like to see the data as well. It used to be 70% male. I think that's coming backwards now. Just I know, like my daughters are on YouTube all the time now. So yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what that new data trend is there.
Definitely. I know a very old stat was that 70% of watch time happened on mobile devices, but we see connected TV really taking over. And that was something else
Yeah.
Google really tried to emphasize. They shared some connected people watching even like shorts on
Yeah, that
their
surprised me as
TV.
well. Like, yeah. So that was one thing I thought, because usually, especially for shorts and inside of demand gen, I would exclude TV. But I'm thinking now that I'll actually put it back in because of that stat. So that's one thing I'm going to test out and try.
Yeah, and they're bringing some shoppable features there. The user experience is weird. Like you're going to scan a
Yeah.
QR code to confirm. I don't
Yeah.
know, but just
Well,
follow the behavior and then figure out how to get our ads there.
yeah. Now, I would say we've got a couple of demand gen campaigns working in e-commerce brands. And I know it's not the full shoppable feature, but we've definitely seen an uptick when we've added in the product feed to demand gen. And that's definitely has helped. And the best format has actually been on shorts. Now, that could be brand specific because I've only got that in 2 accounts. So it could be brand specific. I know the brand that we're using, they are really, really good with their shorts. So there's a couple of things there, but I wouldn't say that that's going to be for everyone. But the shopping feed has definitely helped. Alrighty, Jyll. Hey, as always, an absolute pleasure to have you on. As I sort of said earlier before, if you go down the description below, you can actually grab Jyll's book. Throw your book up there one more time again. So, look, we obviously only touch the surface on audience targeting today, but if you go through Jyll's book, I'm sure you'll have answer all the questions that you've got in regards to audience targeting and Google Ads. Always a pleasure, Jyll. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Great to see you.